Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. This video is for those who would like to playing over or through changes. It is a concept that of course in jazz is one of the main things, and for a lot of people it's quite daunting because how do you start? The whole idea of improvising over a song has a history, and we have to look at the history before we can get to where we are now. So jamming started out as playing just songs that were popular, like we would do in function bands now, playing songs that everybody knows. After a while, they sort of got tired of playing just the songs and they started improvising the melody that was actually slightly altered, but people could still recognize the melody. And then even later, they started adding chords to make it more interesting, to make the harmony a bit richer, deeper. And the idea was that you play solo over the changes so that people would still recognize what was going on harmonically, but you will no longer be improvising the melody. You were improvising or playing over the changes. So now, all these years later, when you get into a situation where you want to jam over a jazz standard, because these songs then became standards, the idea is the same. You play the head, you play the melody, and then after that, it's up to the solo players to play over the changes. And this is where the whole difficulty started. Because playing over the changes, first of all, you have to recognize the fact that a lot of the times the chords were altered, new chords were added to make it more interesting, that would still support the melody if you would play the original melody. If you then have to solo over the new chords, it can become really complex because there will be a lot of chords, and some chords are not really important to support the song. Therefore, while improvising, you could just ignore those chords, and that is something that not a lot of people are really aware about. If there's a jazz standard with maybe 20 chords, maybe 10 of them are really essential, maybe even less, and all the rest are embellishments. So if you solo over that piece, you could just ignore those embellishing chords and play over the regular chords. So in a 2-5-1, you could ignore the 2, all the 5s, all the 2s, ignore 1-2-5 altogether. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do. We are taught to play over the changes, and every chord has got its mode or its scale that you can or should play over that chord, and then it goes from one scale to the next, which gets really confusing, especially when you're practicing scales on your guitar and you do all your scales. You sort of got a tendency to look for that root note to start your scale, and then all the scales sound very scaly. I don't think that's the best approach. It's very confusing, and it looks like an enormous amount of work to get started. And then there's also the history of jazz. How many solos do you have to transcribe before you're allowed to play on a jam? It is mind-boggling, and it's never ending. So I think there are a few simple ways to get into that world without going totally crazy. The first one is look at the chords and look at what the important notes of the chords are and follow the chords in a very fundamental, straightforward, easy way. So don't focus on scales, modes to play over the chords. Look at the chords. You can still play all the chords and still keep control, because that's what it is. You want to keep control. Now there sort of seems to be a clash between musicality and being able to do something. You could program a computer to do exactly that. Play the arpeggios of every chord, look for the smallest gap between two chords, like a half step, and focus on that one, end on that last note from the first chord, and then do a half step to go to the next chord, and you have a perfect connection between chord A and chord B. A computer could do that. Computer will not add musicality. This is something that comes from every individual player. This is your input. This is your history, everything you've heard, the music you've been listening to, your favorite music, the style of music that you listen to, the style of music that you want to play, that you hear in your head. This is the human aspect. But the computer part of it is the easy part. And if we start with that, it doesn't sound so daunting anymore. It doesn't look like it's totally impossible to get through a standard without messing up totally, or without trying to end up in a sort of pentatonic environment where you can sort of blag away through the changes, because that's not the idea. And everybody who's done that will know for himself, like, man, that's not really what I want to do. I want to play through the changes. I want to pinpoint the changes. I want people to hear the changes when I play. This simple thing that I'm going to share with you will make you a better player over changes. Definitely. I know there's lots of videos that promise you this and that and easy ways out and shortcuts and all of this, and I've got a cupboard full of books trying to explain you a certain approach to playing over changes or playing jazz. And all of them probably are valid, but most of them take like years and years of work with years and years of no progress. At least that's what I experienced. But what did help me is this very simple concept, and I would like to share with you. And if you guys think it's useful, I can elaborate on that in future videos. But for me, it's a massive step forward, or it was a massive step forward. The concept is really simple. You look at the changes. So we're playing over the change, we're playing through the changes. I make a difference between playing over the changes and through the changes. Over the changes is like when you play a pentatonic scale over a blues. You play over the changes, and most of the notes that you play in your pentatonic scale will sort of fit the chords that happen underneath, but you're not really nailing the changes of a blues, because a blues is actually quite a difficult style to play over, because it changes key with every chord actually. When you play pentatonic, you sort of ignore all those key changes and just play something that fits over all of the chords, more or less. And it sounds cool, that's what blues is about. That's not what we're going to do. We're trying to nail the changes, so we're playing through the changes, not over the changes, but actually through. The concept is really, really simple. You take a standard, you put it in iReal Pro. I mean, I recommend everybody to get iReal Pro. And you play over those changes over and over again. And with every new sequence, you add a little amount of difficulty in your playing. But since we're playing through the changes, we start with the chords and we start with the root notes of the chord. And even if you do just that, you will notice like, oh, it immediately sounds different than when I'm trying to find sort of a pentatonic solution. Now in jazz, and this is subject for another video, but in jazz a lot of the changes are in the cycle of fifths or fourths. And since our guitars are tuned in fourths, sometimes the roots of the notes of a standard chord progression in jazz are on the same fret, but on a different string. And this is fourths. Now, for the example that we're going to use, I'm using All the Things You Are, which is a pretty straightforward jazz standard. I will put it on screen as well. Let's first play the root notes of every chord in the changes. We do this at tempo 180, and I will show you F, B flat, E flat, A flat. As you can see, so these chords are all a fourth apart from each other. So this is all same fret, except for when we go to the B string, which is tuned differently. Then we have to jump a fret. But as you can see, cycle of fourths. So keep that in mind. B flat, E flat, A flat, A flat, G, C. Back to C, F, B flat, E flat, A flat, A, D, G. Quick to E, A, D, G, F sharp, E and C. And back to the beginning. B flat, E flat, A flat. Then then G. Pretty straightforward, and the thing is you should do this like wherever you can on your neck. I've now done it on the first 5 frets, but do that all over your neck. Try to find your root notes scattered all over your neck. So this way you will open your fretboard knowledge a bit more, and that helps as well for all the rest. So once you've done that, you've done the roots, look at the roots and the 7th. If it's a standard chord, not a major 7th, the 7th will be flat and will always be 2 frets down. Or 4 frets up, string lower. But I find 2 frets down easier. So this is the next level of difficulty. Let's just do that. Root and 7th. Now the next step would be adding the 3rd, and I would suggest playing the root and the 3rd. So ignore the 7th for now and just play the root and the 3rd. So we're not doing any modes, any scales, we're just playing 2 notes from every chord. So it sounds a bit left and right and scattered and all over the place, but that's because it's an exercise. This is not to be meant music. You try to add some musicality to it later, but for the moment it's an exercise. It's an exercise on finding the notes on your fretboard, finding the root, finding the 3rd. Now let's do all 3 of them, the root, the 7th and the 3rd. Remember, you don't have to play 8 notes on every bar or 4 notes on every bar. You can just wait sometimes and let some chords pass by to give you some time to think and to breathe, and then pick up after a couple of bars on the next chord. So it's more important to play the right notes than playing notes all the time. So I will show that as well. So here we go. Root, 7th and 3rds. So the next step, now we've done that, we've done the root, the 7th and the 3rd, you can start looking at the 9th, which is the 1 note above the root, and sometimes a 9 is a regular 9, sometimes it's flat. Now you could try to figure out where you have to play a flat 9, but if you run through the changes and you try a couple of 9s, the flat 9 and the regular 9, you will hear when the regular 9 is inappropriate and you should play a flat 9. So I'm not going to bother about the fact if should it be a 9 or a flat 9. I'm just going to play a 9 and let my ears do the rest, like, okay, this should have been a flat 9, and next time when I come on this chord I will play a flat 9. So I'm not making it more complicated than it is. Let's do the 9. So now I've done quite a few things. We've done the root, the third, the seventh, and the ninth. 4 notes. Now we can, for the last part of this exercise, we can add trying playing an arpeggio every now and again. So if you know a few arpeggios on your neckboard, you can introduce them as well as an extra musical element. Don't get too focused on the arpeggios. I think the first 3 steps are the most important ones. The 4 steps, root, 7th, 3rd, and 9 are the most important ones. But now let's look at the arpeggios. If we find space and time to insert them in a comfortable way without us getting lost. I'm not sure how long this video is now, but in this short period of time, there's a lot that you've practiced. Start with the root, then the root and the 7th, and then the root and the 7th and the 3rd, and then the root and the 7th and 9th. Try the arpeggios. Go back to just the root. Try to find different roots. You will notice if you do this for half an hour, and I suggest you do it for half an hour because it's a long time, and in those 30 minutes, a lot of things will happen in your brain. A lot of things will consolidate. And if you keep getting back to that F sharp half diminished, in the beginning it was like, oh, okay, that's the root, that's the 3rd, that's the 5th, and where's the 7th? Oh, it's here. Okay, the arpeggio is that. I mean, if you sometimes stop and focus on the chord that is happening there, and you clean that up in your brain and in your fingers, the next time you pass over that chord, it will be easier, and the next time it will be even more easier. And after 30 minutes, you've cleaned up a lot of space. It's like pulling the weeds from your garden. And that's why I suggest using the same song over and over and over again. You could practice all the things you have for months on end, just using that song and trying to find music within those changes and trying to open up the fretboard for you. And it will make a massive difference. I promise you, on my life, it will change the way you play, and it will open up that box of playing over or playing through the changes. Okay guys, that's it for now. I hope you enjoyed that.